We have probably experienced it all. We take photos in the streets and we find like a nice subject, but we are a bit concerned or afraid. What if that person reacts, gives us an angry stare, or even confronts us of taking a photo of them? And these insecurities I have faced so much in my own photography. And in today's video, I want to give you some key advice on how you can become a discreet and inconspicuous photographer. So now I would say, let's get into the video. Alright, let's start with an easy one, and this one is related to gear, and more specifically, how heavy and big your gear is. Because naturally, the bigger your gear, the more attention you capture in the street. And I know there's many photographers that want to be noticed with their really heavy cameras, but if you want to be inconspicuous, you should probably opt for something smaller, because people will notice you if you show up with a DSLR and a 70-200 f2.8 attached to your lens. Because something people who are not that much into photography do is that they correlate the size of your camera gear to the level of professionality that you have. So in other words, if you have a massive camera, they think that you're professional and they are more suspicious about what you might do with their photos. So they might think, what if he publishes my photo in a magazine and my face is to be seen by everybody? So people are more suspicious and people are more likely to notice you, and people are also more likely to question what you want to do with a photo. And this is actually a reason why I picked up this camera here, which is the Fujifilm X106, because it's really, really compact. There is of course other compact cameras like the Ricos, for instance, but this camera literally looks like a toy or a disposable film camera at best. So it doesn't really raise suspicion, and people just assume that I'm just some kind of a lost tourist who takes some very crappy vacation photos, and they don't really think that you have any evil intentions with your photos. The next way to be inconspicuous in the street is a specific photography technique that I use all the time, and I tend to call it the Fisherman's technique. And let me explain to you what the Fisherman's technique is, and I use it 95% of the time, so stay tuned. So the Fisherman's technique can be broken down into 3 different stages. The first stage is that you look for the light. You look, where is the good light? And based on the light, you frame your composition, which leads us to the second step in the process, which is that you actually frame up your shots. So you found a good light and you look, okay, what should be in the scene? What adds to the scene? And what should probably be eliminated? Additionally, you can look for like leading lines or like framing elements, and then you frame up your shot. Also, with a subject in mind, or where exactly you want your subject to be. And that also leads me to the third stage of the Fisherman's technique, which is that you wait for your subject to pass through. So you framed up your shot and you wait until your subject is finally there. And if you live in an urban environment like I do, it usually doesn't take that long for a subject to pass through your scene. So how does the Fisherman's technique make you inconspicuous? Well, first of all, subjects most of the time don't even know that you're taking their photo, because they assume that you're taking a photo of the street, of the scene as you have composed it, and not necessarily of themselves. So how do I know? Well, often people, not often, but sometimes people stand still and wait for you to take the shot, not noticing that they are in fact the shot. And additionally, the alternatives to the Fisherman's technique are worse, at least when you try to be inconspicuous. Because the opposite of the Fisherman's technique is the hunter's technique, where you actively look for interesting subjects and you hunt them down. So you follow them around to take the photo, which might be seen as intrusive. But if you fish for your scene, so use the Fisherman's technique, you effectively just wait patiently, you don't move around that much, you have a nice balance between the scene, so the way you set up your composition, and your subject. So you value composition a little bit more, and since you're literally just patiently standing around, you do not really catch that much of people's attentions, and you will probably stay unnoticed. Another way to be inconspicuous is to shoot on tighter focal lengths, because a problem you might encounter if you shoot on a wide angle lens, let's say like a 28 or a 35mm, is that you need to be really quite close to get an impactful photo and to fill the frame. But if you shoot on something that's a little bit tighter, like a 50mm on 85mm, it is possible to keep some physical distance between you and the subject while still having a nice and tight frame. And this is, for instance, the reason why I really love to pick up my 50mm f2 lens, which is about a 75mm on full frame, which gives me that tighter field of view so I can stay a little bit more distant from your subject while still getting close to my subject. And additionally, also adding up to a point I made previously in the video, which is that this lens is also really compact. So it's not a massive 70-200 f2.8 that will attract attention. The next way to be inconspicuous is to shoot people from behind. And I have to admit that this sounds a bit shadier than it actually is, because when you shoot people from behind, that has two benefits. First of all, they do not see you. Additionally, they are not visible because they literally move away from the camera, meaning that they will not be identifiable and therefore probably also not have a problem with you taking their photo. And on a personal note, the fact that the subject is not visible perfectly aligns with my own personal street photography style, because I 90% of the time keep my subjects hidden, keep my subjects anonymous. And now you might wonder, yes, but if I shoot people from behind, doesn't this remove a lot of interest from the scene and maybe also some emotional value of the scene because you cannot see the person's face? And yes and no, because I feel like when you shoot from behind, it is still very well possible to tell something about the person you photograph. What is the person wearing? Whether it's wearing accessories like umbrellas or a hat, for instance. And additionally, there is also some degree of secrecy involved in the scene. And I think a photo that makes the viewer ask more questions than it provides answers is, in my opinion, a better photo, because it doesn't tell the entire story of a person. So it really makes the viewer question, who is that person? Where's that person going? And in the end, bear in mind that if you shoot from behind, another side effect is that you're inconspicuous and discreet because the person does not see that you actually take the photo. Well, so far it might have sounded like it's really bad to be caught as a photographer, or that the person that you photograph is gonna eat you when they notice that you take the photo. But the reality is that most people do not care, especially when you shoot in a city or urban environment. People are usually at least used to you taking photos, meaning that they are not that suspicious about your intentions. And if they approach you, it's mostly not because they want you to delete their photo or they want to yell at you because you took their photo, but it is because they're just curious about what you do. So if somebody approaches you, make sure to have a story set up in your mind. So just tell them what you do. Additionally, also make sure to have some pictures from your portfolio with you so that you can show them. Because the more information you provide of yourself, the more people are willing to trust you and the more likely it is that they will want to have their photo taken. And something I actually do a lot, and I find a lot of fulfillment, is it that I offer the people to send them their photo. Because I have had so many families that I have photographed just randomly in the street, and I ask them, do you want to have your photo? And some of these photos have actually been really well received, and people were so happy that I sent them their photo. So you can really make people's days if you take a photo of them, of their pets, because most people really appreciate that. And if you encounter a person that doesn't appreciate that you take a photo of them and they want you to delete the photo, don't insist on your right that you're allowed to take photos in public. Just delete the photo, because in the end, even if the photo is fantastic, I wouldn't be very happy about the photo because I know that the person that I photographed is not happy that I actually took a photo of them. So don't engage in a conflict, don't insist on your rights, and just make sure that everybody is happy. So stay cooperative. So in the end, if you embrace small gear, tighter focal lengths, the fisherman's technique to value your scene more than your subject, and you also shoot people from behind, you can be a much more discreet photographer. And I hope that these tips were kind of useful and they really reflect my own shooting style. So I really use them a lot in practice, and I really hope that they will help you too. And with that being said, thank you so much for tuning in today, and I hopefully see you in next week's video. Bye.